A tenant is charged with animal cruelty after he abandoned two dogs in his home after being evicted. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. All right, so I have an interesting article for you today, and it's going over an eviction story. Now, I've been talking a lot about eviction stories, and I wanted to highlight this story in particular because, we've all had properties where after the tenant left, they left something behind, okay? They left trash, they've trashed our places, they've left furniture, all sorts of nastiness. It can cost us thousands and thousands of dollars. But I have heard about cases where the tenant abandoned their pets. They just decided, I don't want this pet anymore. I'm leaving. I'm not going to attempt to get this pet back. And that is exactly what happened in this case here with these two dogs. And these two dogs were found starving. And fortunately, somebody stepped in there and they said, hey, we have to criminally charge this guy because this is nonsense. This is absolutely ridiculous that you would treat an animal this way, that, they would be left abandoned within this property. So, I wanted to bring this story to light because I'm just curious to hear if other landlords have experienced this before, where somebody has left a pet behind and had no intention of coming back and getting it. So before I get into this article, go ahead, hit the like and subscribe button, maybe leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think. So has anyone ever abandoned a pet or, an animal within your property? And what is the worst thing that somebody has ever left behind during an eviction? Now, the worst thing I can say is trash and furniture. That's it. Fortunately, no pets, living or otherwise. Okay, but I'm just curious if other landlords have experienced this sort of thing before. So anyway, let's get into this article and see what it says. Now, this article is coming from kwtx.com, and it says, man abandoned two starving dogs following eviction in Bruceville, Eddy, affidavit states. I'm a big pet lover. I have a dog myself, and she's part of the family, so I couldn't even imagine just abandoning your pet and then leaving it in a predicament where it could possibly have died. So man, this guy, deserves the jail time, okay? Deserves getting convicted for this sort of crime. But anyway, let's get into the story and see what it says. Dana James Hogrell, 42, is charged with cruelty to non-livestock animals after he abandoned two starving dogs in Bruceville, Eddy, when he was evicted from his home, an arrest affidavit states. Shortly after 3 p.m. on December 8th of 2023, a woman identified in the document as Stacy Soto called the police chief in Bruceville, Eddy, to report she and her husband, whom she reportedly identified as Hogrell, were about to be evicted from the residence at 346 Crescent Creek Lane. Soto told the police they had two dogs in kennels who had not eaten for days and asked if the city could send someone to pick up the dogs because she had nowhere to take them, the document states. Soto reportedly described the dogs as mixed breed female and male pit bull. Yeah, so she called the police on herself. Said, hey, we ain't fed these dogs in days. Now, it doesn't surprise me that somebody who isn't able to pay the rent isn't going to be a very responsible pet owner. That's why I oftentimes think that it's insane to me how some tenants will have pets and they can't even pay their own bills. I mean, give me a break. Pet food isn't free. Pets aren't free. Okay? And so now we're in a situation here where we have people who couldn't afford these pets, obviously. We're letting these pets starve, and now you're going to face the consequences of it. But man, bad situation overall, and I'm not surprised that the landlord was evicting these people. A few minutes later, the police chief called Soto back to let her know the city had no one to pick up the animals, but would be willing to provide her with the contact information for several shelters who would take care of the dogs while the animals were adopted or placed in foster care. The police chief, the document states, advised Soto she needed to make arrangements for the dogs because it is against the law to abandon animals. Soto, the affidavit states, told the police chief, from what I hear, they're about to come and move everything. So, that's part of everything. They will figure it out, right? So, yeah, that's what she thought. She was like, oh, well, they're going to come and throw all our stuff out anyway, so we're just going to make the landlord take care of it. What a joke. Give me a break. This is why, I have such anger anger towards some people because they are just dumb. They're just completely ignorant and dumb. These are your dogs. Take them with you. If you have nowhere to take them, do what the police chief said. Take them down to the shelter, okay? You're just in the wrong 100% here, and it's just so scummy. It's frustrating. At about 3:30 p.m. the next day, the police chief observed 2 stray dogs, a mixed breed female and a male pit bull matching the descriptions provided by Soto a day earlier, roaming in the area of 346 Crescent Creek Lake. I observed that both dogs were very thin and appeared to be malnourished, Police Chief Michael Dorsey wrote in the affidavit. Both dogs had protruding hip bones, ribs, and spines. The dogs were captured by animal control and placed with a caretaker. The police chief returned to the residence at 346 Crescent Creek Lane and observed open dog kennels in the front yard, in addition to empty food and water bowls. So, let me get this straight. Not only did they not take the dogs with them or take them down to the shelter, they just opened up the cage and said, "Be free!" Yeah, that wasn't going to end very well. And you know, I don't know this area, this part of Texas, right? But this sounds like a small town where you got the police chief rolling by, knowing, you know, the people who live there, and like, you know, they called me about some dogs they wanted to get rid of, and here's a couple of dogs. Yeah, well, you know, sometimes small town justice works pretty quick, okay? And I'm glad to hear that these people, they weren't let off the hook in this situation. In the backyard of the vacant home, the police chief found 8 chickens inside cages. So they didn't just have dogs, they had a bunch of chickens at the house too. Give me a break. Dorsey called Soto, and the woman allegedly acknowledged the animals belonged to her and her husband. Soto told the police chief the chickens were supposed to go to a neighbor and that her husband was unable to care for the dogs and has been unable to go and get dog food, the document states. Dorsey sent Soto photos of the dogs found roaming near the vacant home, and Soto not only identified the dogs as theirs, but also said their names were Remy and Grey Goose, the affidavit states. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if there was some kind of controlled substance drug issue going on here, because something just doesn't sound right, okay? I mean, you couldn't possibly be so ignorant to believe that, yeah, I'm just going to let my dogs go and they're starving to death, and oh, well, you know, we weren't able to go and get food. You know, dogs can eat people food too, okay? You could just cook up a batch of rice and a dog could eat that, you know, mixed with some ground beef, and that'd be perfectly fine for a dog. But, you know, to me, it's not about they're not forgetting to go get dog food. This is about these people having serious problems to the point where they're abandoning chickens and dogs at their house and getting evicted. And now they're probably surprised that they were arrested for doing so. If you can get someone to pick up the chickens, also, I have misplaced the neighbor's number, Soto allegedly wrote a message to Dorsey, adding, I don't know what to do about the dogs. I have no place for them. 7 of the 8 abandoned chickens were captured and placed with a caretaker. Hogrel is not currently being held at the McClellan County Jail. The arrest affidavit for Hogrel did not clarify whether authorities will file charges against Soto. Yeah, well, maybe they should, okay? It sounds like these people had some problems. They both need some charges going against them. But anyway, interesting story. I'm still curious what other landlords, if they've ever dealt with this sort of situation before where people have left their pets behind following an eviction or a move out.